to show you my setup today of how I mix my covers, the process that I go through of having fun trying to get it sounding as close to the original as possible. Now, this is not meant to be an exact tone matching video or how to get the brown sound from Eddie. I wasn't even really using any EVH products. The only EVH product I was using was the MXR Phase 90 pedal. Everything else was my usual setup of my Kiesel CS6 into my Victory amp behind me here. Again, like I said in a previous video, same settings as usual. So how did I get it sounding a little bit more like Eddie in that video? Again, not exactly. I'm not saying I sound like Eddie. I'm going to show you two things in this video that are vital to your guitar tone and that make such a huge impact on the sound of your guitar. It's not the pickups, it's not the amp you use, but two things that are often overlooked by a lot of guitar players that really drastically change your sound and your tone. So here is my Logic project. You can see here I have the backing track, which if we solo that out, just the backing track. No guitar. If I skip forward, that's the solo section. Drums and bass. Now, by the way, I will be shocked if I don't have copyright issues for this video. So if you guys are interested in supporting the video, if you like the video and want to support the channel, check out the Sweetwater links below. Sweetwater was kind enough to sponsor this video. So go grab yourself something nice off Sweetwater, use the links below, and it does help out the channel. As always, I appreciate the support. So now here is my soloed guitar performance. So as you can hear, the phase pedal was recorded direct into the amp. So that's committed. That's already there recorded. You can't take out the phase pedal. And I like actually recording that way nowadays, of trying to capture a sound that you can't go back and change. This is why I've gotten away from plugins and modelers and stuff like that. I like capturing an in-the-moment sound. So I can't really go back and change which amp I used or how much gain was on the amp or the phase pedal. Those things are committed to the track. Those things are recorded in that performance. Typically in a mixing process of any recording, especially in a studio setting, the spatial effects are the ones that you would typically add afterwards in the mix. The reason you would do that is so that you can better control it afterwards. So instead of having a reverb pedal run into the amp and then you're committed with that spatial sound, in a mixing process, it's a lot better to be able to control that reverb afterwards. So other than the phase pedal, it's a fairly dry sound with that distortion being recorded. So this is the first thing that I like to play around with and have fun mixing to sound like the original track is the reverb. Reverb makes a huge difference to your guitar sound. I'm going to show you in a second here by taking it off and showing you the difference in sound. So just to prove my point, here's the guitar without reverb. Let's take off the reverb here. And especially for the solo. The guitar is right here. Instead of the guitar being kind of in the space of the mix, it sounds like your ear is right up next to the speaker, which again, for lead guitar is not usually the sound that you want to get. One thing to keep in mind as well is, as guitar players, when we are in our room, whatever room we're in, playing with our amp, we are used to hearing reverb. You're used to hearing the sound of your room. Then when you go and mic your guitar amp and the mic is right here on the speaker, that is not where your ear usually is to your amp. And people are usually shocked at the sound that they get from their amp when they mic it for the first time. They're like, that's not my tone. That's not how my amp sounds. It's because your mic isn't sitting up here, 6-7 feet away above your amp, which is where your ears usually are. The mic is right here to the speaker. It is a drastically different sound when you're capturing the amp like that. That's why you have to usually add the reverb and add that spatial sound that you are used to hearing, because your ear is not usually right next to the speaker. So as I said, I like to have fun with the reverb of trying to kind of match, turn it back on, Off. On. Listen how different that sounds compared to... And also soloed out, that may sound like a ton of reverb, but again, in a mix of a song where the drums also have reverb, the vocals definitely have a little bit of reverb, you're combined into the mix that way, and it actually sits quite nicely. Now, the second thing that makes such a huge difference to your guitar tone that a lot of guitar players either overlook or just don't really realize when it comes to especially recorded studio guitar tracks is EQ. It is so rare, if it ever happens, to have a guitar recorded in a studio setting and not EQ'd even a little amount afterwards. So yes, even if you have the same guitar into the same amp, into the same pedals, you don't know how that guitar was EQ'd afterwards in the mixing process and the mastering process, by the way. So it's probably EQ'd twice. Again, I'm going to show you how different of a sound this gets because it is still my Victory amp with my Kiesel guitar, the same setup I always use, but this one, it sounds more like Eddie's tone than it does my usual tone, and that's because of the EQ. So if I pull up the EQ here, I did a couple adjustments. Now, this is fairly normal here because you're just getting rid of the low end, especially for a guitar solo. You're probably not even picking up frequencies in that range anyways, so it just clears up the signal. I don't think it would make too big of a difference having this filter here, but again, for the mixing, it just clears up some of that bottom end that you don't really need in the first place, especially for lead guitar. But you'll see over here two big changes, and this is more of an EQ change than I would typically make in my covers. Usually if I'm going for my sound, I actually try to EQ as little as possible, maybe a little bump here, a little takeaway here, but I try to capture the authentic sound of what I'm getting from the amp. But again, here going for something a little closer to Eddie, I had to boost the high end at about 6K, what boosted about 7 dB, which is a high boost for me. That's more than I would usually do. And then I cut some of the mids around 900 hertz, again about 6 dB. So let's listen to the guitar without the EQ. Let's turn off the EQ, and this is what it sounds like coming straight from the Victory. Recorded with an SM57, by the way. I didn't use a ribbon mic for this because the ribbon mic captures that warmth, low, mid frequency, which for Van Halen, you're not really wanting in this. You're wanting that aggressive bite. So the SM57 was totally fine by itself. So here's the guitar without EQ. Let's turn off the reverb so you can hear it. A lot more mids. Turn on the EQ. Off. On. Now let's hear how that sounds with the reverb taking on and off the EQ as well. Off. On. Off. On. So you can hear that drastically changes the tone of having that EQ. So I do that sometimes in covers, not usually as drastic as that, but again, I'm trying to get closer to that EVH sound with my setup. Again, not using any EVH gear other than the Phase 90. Oh, and the last thing that I forgot to mention, the last thing that does contribute to the sound, and it would make it sound a bit different than the original recording if I didn't do this, is actually just panning. So you'll see that I have the guitar here panned about 20, I had it about 20 to the left. If you listen to Van Halen 1, Eddie's guitar is always in the left speaker. What they do, which I did not do, was they put the reverb in the right speaker, and that really gives it the spatial sound for Van Halen 1 so that it's not just all mono in one ear. But Eddie's guitar is always to the hard left for the early recordings, at least the first album. So again, I just panned to the left to be closer to where Eddie's guitar would be in the mix. But if I had it centered, it would not sound as close to the original recording because the guitar and the vocals would be fighting each other in the panning. So panning, EQ, reverb, huge difference to your guitar sound, how it fits in a mix, and how it sounds with drums and bass, especially if you're trying to get close to a cover that you're doing or matching someone else's recording. So I highly suggest you play around with these things. Either record yourself in a DAW and play around with the different reverb plugins or EQ. By the way, with EQ, the best thing I can suggest is use your ear. So grab a point and just change the frequency. I would just grab a point and just change this frequency so you can hear what that is changing. What frequency? Is it nice? Is it harsh? And then you can change whether you want to get rid of some of it or if you want to boost it, and at which point you want to add it or take it away. But don't use the visual when you're doing EQ, use your ear. One of the best things to do is grab that and close your eyes and move around your mouse until what sounds nice. And it might surprise you sometimes that a drastic change can really improve your sound, or sometimes you just need a little bump in a certain frequency to bring that guitar forward into the mix. So hopefully you found this somewhat helpful and informative. Thank you again to Sweetwater for sponsoring the video. If you guys want to check out any of the affiliate links below, go ahead and grab yourself something cool off Sweetwater. I always appreciate the support. Let me know in the comments below if you have any questions on any of this. It's always fun to kind of share this process. Honestly, sometimes I like recording things, whether it's original ideas or covers, just so I can have fun mixing it afterwards. I really enjoy the production engineering side of music, so this is a lot of fun to me. I'm always happy to share this stuff with you guys and any of the tricks that I use to try to get the sounds that I get. Let me know what you think in the comments. If you have any questions, check out the affiliate links below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.